My name is Anna Reynolds, and I'm 35 years old. 3 months ago, my father stood before 200 executives at his retirement party and called me his greatest disappointment. A teacher making $50,000 a year while my siblings earned millions. But when his boss recognized me as the majority shareholder, the room froze. What happened next changed everything and cost my father $30 million. Before I share how a simple teacher brought down a CFO, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me tell you about the night my father learned that some inheritances come with conditions, and some daughters keep better records than any accountant. My grandfather, William Reynolds, founded one of the Fortune 500's most successful consulting firms from a borrowed desk in 1962. By the time I was born, Reynolds Sandunch Associates occupied 40 floors of prime Manhattan real estate. Grandfather built an empire, but more importantly, he built it with principles. My father, Thomas, joined as CFO 30 years ago. Where grandfather saw people, dad saw numbers. Where grandfather valued character, dad worshipped portfolios. Our 8-bedroom estate in Greenwich, his collection of vintage Ferraris, the Patek Philippe watches, these weren't just possessions. They were scorecards. I'd been the golden child once. Harvard Business School, top 5%. Investment banking internship at Goldman Sachs lined up. Then, during my final semester, I volunteered at an inner-city tutoring program. One afternoon, a 7th grader named Maria finally understood fractions after weeks of struggle. Her face lit up, pure joy at learning. That moment changed everything. When I turned down Wall Street to teach, Dad cut me off completely, not just financially, emotionally. 5 years of silence, broken only at grandfather's funeral. Even then, he positioned himself 3 pews away. Money amplifies who you are, Annie, grandfather had told me during our last conversation. Make sure you like that person first. I became a teacher at PS 118 in Brooklyn. My students came from families where English was the second language and dinner wasn't guaranteed. My father called it throwing away Harvard. I called it finding purpose. The email invitation to his retirement party arrived through his secretary. Not even his signature, just typed, "Your father requests your attendance at his retirement celebration. Black tie required." I stared at those words, wondering why now. Why break 5 years of silence for this? 5 years teaching in Brooklyn had taught me more than Harvard ever could. My classrooms peeling paint and outdated textbooks were worlds away from Reynolds Pass Center and Associates marble lobbies. But when Destiny Jackson earned a full scholarship to Columbia, or when Kevin Chen's essay about his immigrant parents won the state competition, those victories meant more than any bonus Dad ever celebrated. Meanwhile, Marcus, my younger brother, rose through the company ranks with suspicious speed. VP of Sales at 32, a record Dad boasted to anyone listening. His wife posted their Hamptons weekends constantly, hashtagging blessed while wearing her new Cartier. Sarah, my surgeon sister, maintained calculated distance from family drama, sending holiday cards but declining dinners. Strange things kept me tethered to that other world, though. Corporate emails still arrived in my inbox. Board meeting minutes, quarterly reports, shareholder updates. I'd tried unsubscribing twice. Ike claimed it was a system error that couldn't be corrected. The emails kept coming. "Ms. Reynolds, you heading to the teachers' union meeting?" Principal Martinez asked one Friday. "Can't tonight. Family obligation." She raised an eyebrow. I rarely mentioned family. The retirement invitation had included a handwritten note from Blackwood, the CEO. "Your attendance would be particularly appreciated, Ms. Reynolds. Particularly appreciated. Corporate speak for required." That evening, I graded essays about dreams deferred while my laptop displayed Reynolds Plunge Associates' latest quarterly report. Revenue up 12%. Marcus's division, however, showed irregularities I recognized from my banking days. numbers that didn't quite add up, contracts that seemed inflated. I printed everything, adding it to a folder I'd been building for a year. Just a teacher's habit, I told myself. We document everything. Sarah's Armani dress from 3 seasons ago still had the tags. "Take it," she'd said over the phone, her hospital pager beeping in the background. "I won't be staying long anyway." My 2010 Honda Civic looked absurd pulling up to the Ritz-Carlton. The valet's smirk wasn't subtle until he saw my last name on the invitation list. Then confusion replaced condescension. The lobby gleamed with the kind of wealth that whispered rather than shouted. Waterford crystal chandeliers, Persian rugs worth more than my annual salary. I recognized half the faces from Forbes magazine covers. "Anna?" Marcus's voice dripped surprise and something else. "Warning?" He stood by the elevator in his Tom Ford suit, Rolex Daytona catching the light. "Didn't think you'd actually show." "Dad invited me." "Dad tolerates you. There's a difference." He stepped closer, cologne aggressive and expensive. "Look, just don't make a scene, okay? This is important." "When have I ever made a scene?" He laughed, ugly and short. "Right, the invisible daughter. You know you're at table 17? By the kitchen. Sarah's at table 3 with the board members." Table 17. I wondered if they'd literally measured the maximum distance from the head table. His wife appeared, dripping in Hermes and judgment. "Is this your sister? The teacher?" She said it like diagnosing a disease. The ballroom doors opened, revealing a massive banner. Thomas Reynolds, 30 years of excellence. His photo, 20 feet tall, smiled down at the gathering crowd. 200 of New York's financial elite, here to celebrate a man who hadn't spoken to his daughter in 5 years. Marcus knew something I didn't. I could see it in his nervous energy, the way he kept checking his phone. His earlier warning wasn't brotherly concern. It was self-preservation. "Enjoy the party, Anna," he said, guiding his wife away. "While you can." The ballroom doors beckoned. Whatever waited inside, I was walking in with my eyes wide open. If you've ever felt judged for choosing purpose over profit, for picking passion over a paycheck, leave a comment below. I want to hear your story, and if this resonates with you, a simple like helps more people find this video. People who might need to hear they're not alone in choosing their own path. Now, let me show you what happened when I walked into that room full of people who measured worth in millions. Table 17 sat in the acoustic shadow of the kitchen doors, each swing releasing bursts of clanging plates. My table mates, junior analysts, and someone's confused great aunt, who kept asking about the vegetarian options. From here, my father's head table looked like a distant stage. The Macallan 25 flowed freely at the front tables. We got house wine. The beluga caviar didn't make it past table 10. We had bruschetta that had seen better days. Every detail screamed hierarchy. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC began, "celebrating 3 decades of financial excellence." I counted. 7 tables between me and my father. 7 tables of strangers who mattered more. Sarah sat at table 3, her surgical precision extended to avoiding eye contact. She'd positioned herself perfectly, close enough to show support, far enough to avoid association. Marcus held court at the main table, his laugh carrying across the room. Every few minutes, he'd glance my way, that same nervous energy from earlier. His wife whispered to the other trophy spouses, her diamonds catching the light with practiced movements. Around me, executives discussed deals worth more than entire school districts' budgets. Leveraged buyouts, hostile takeovers, quarterly projections, the language of my abandoned life. One mentioned casually closing a deal that would eliminate redundancies. Redundancies. People with families, dreams, mortgages. "You're Thomas's daughter, aren't you?" The great aunt had figured it out. "The teacher?" "Yes." "How wonderful! Teaching shapes the future." She smiled genuinely. "Much more important than all this nonsense with numbers." If only my father shared her perspective. The lights dimmed. Thomas Reynolds stood, microphone in hand, his Armani suit impeccable. The room fell silent. This was it, the moment Marcus had been dreading, the reason for the invitation after 5 years. 30 years ago, I joined Reynolds Plough and Associates with a simple vision, my father began, his voice commanding the room. Excellence, not mediocrity, not participation trophies. Excellence. The crowd murmured approval. These were his people, those who believed net worth equaled self-worth. I've been blessed with 3 children. He paused, letting the word blessed hang in the air. My eldest, Sarah, chief of neurosurgery at Mount Sinai at 38. When she operates, she holds lives in her hands. Excellence. Sarah straightened, a small smile playing at her lips. The room applauded politely. My son, Marcus, youngest VP in company history. Last quarter alone, his division generated $40 million in revenue. At 32, he's already surpassed executives twice his age. Excellence. Marcus stood briefly, waving. His wife beamed beside him, her hand strategically placed to display her wedding ring. Then Dad's pause stretched longer. His eyes found me at table 17. The temperature seemed to drop. Success is a choice, he continued, still staring at me. Some choose to climb mountains, others choose to watch from base camp, some pursue greatness, others settle for adequate. My table mates shifted uncomfortably. The great aunt patted my hand. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real achievement. Not everyone has the courage to compete in the arena. Some people look at opportunity and choose. He let the silence build. Safety, simplicity, the easy path. He wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. 200 pairs of eyes followed his gaze to my corner. But tonight isn't about those who chose mediocrity. Tonight celebrates excellence, real achievement, the kind that builds empires, not classroom bulletin boards. Someone gasped. Several phones appeared, subtle recording lights glowing. Sarah finally looked at me, her face pale. This wasn't just rejection, it was public execution, and from Marcus's expression, we were just getting started. Let me tell you about potential, my father continued, his voice gaining momentum. Anna, my middle child, had everything. Harvard Business School, top of her class. Goldman Sachs wanted her. Morgan Stanley competed for her. She could have been somebody. The microphone's gold plating caught the light as he gestured toward my table. Instead, she chose to become a public school teacher. $50,000 a year. My secretary makes more. The parking attendant at my building probably takes home more. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Wrong kind of laughter. Uncomfortable, not amused. I spent $300,000 on her education. $300,000. For what? So she could teach teenagers to read books they'll forget by next week? So she could grade papers in a studio apartment in Brooklyn? Sarah stood abruptly, then sat back down. Marcus whispered urgently to his wife. I tell you this as a cautionary tale, Dad continued, his face flushed now. Success requires courage. It requires ambition. When your children show weakness, when they choose failure, you have to accept the truth. Not everyone in your family will make you proud. The silence was suffocating. Even the kitchen had gone quiet. Some of you have children considering lesser paths. Teaching, social work, nonprofit nonsense. Show them what real success looks like. Don't let them waste their potential like, he pointed directly at me, like that disappointment sitting by the kitchen. I stood slowly. Every phone in the room tracked my movement. My legs felt steady despite the hammering in my chest. 3 years of facing down angry parents at conferences had prepared me for this moment. Anna, sit down, Dad commanded into the microphone. Don't embarrass yourself further. I kept walking toward the exit. Dignity intact, head high. My students deserved that from their teacher. That's right, run away, his voice followed me. Just like you ran from real responsibility, just like you ran from success. Then a voice cut through the room. Wait. Richard Blackwood, CEO of Reynolds Page Santon Associates, stood at table 2. Ms. Reynolds, are you Anna Reynolds? The A. Reynolds listed on our board? The room froze. My father's hand holding the microphone began to tremble. "I'm sorry?" I turned back, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. Blackwood stepped forward, his presence commanding without effort. "Anna Reynolds, you're the A. Reynolds who holds 25% of voting shares, our majority shareholder." The microphone slipped from my father's hand, creating a sharp feedback screech. "That's impossible," Thomas sputtered, scrambling to retrieve it. "There's some mistake." "No mistake." Blackwood pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly. "A. Reynolds, inherited from William Reynolds' estate, 25% voting shares, making her our largest individual shareholder. I've been trying to reach you for years about board matters, Ms. Reynolds." Phones lifted throughout the room, recording every second. The Wall Street Journal reporter at Table 6 was already typing furiously. "She's a teacher," my father's voice cracked. "She makes $50,000 a year. She doesn't. She owns more of this company than you do, Thomas." Blackwood's tone was professionally neutral, but the subtext was clear. "You hold 8%. Your daughter holds 25." Marcus shot up from his chair. "This is fraud. She must have manipulated grandfather." "Sit down, Marcus." Blackwood didn't even look at him. "Ms. Reynolds, I apologize for this unexpected recognition. But since you're here, there are several board matters requiring your attention." I stood in the center of the room, 200 executives watching the power dynamic shift in real time. The teacher by the kitchen had just become the most powerful person in the room. "I've been receiving the board emails," I said calmly. "I'm aware of the matters requiring attention." My father's face had gone from red to white. "You knew? You've known this whole time?" "The quarterly reports make interesting reading, especially your son's division numbers." Marcus knocked over his wine glass. The Macallan 25 spread across the white tablecloth like blood. Security guards appeared at the ballroom entrances, but Blackwood raised his hand, and they waited. "You conniving little—" Thomas lunged for the microphone stand, his composed executive mask completely shattered. "This is my company. I built this 30 years." "You built nothing." The words came out calmer than I felt. "Grandfather built it. You just managed the money." "I am the CFO. I decide who, what—" He was stammering now, his carefully prepared speech forgotten. "You're nothing but a teacher. Nothing." Marcus jumped onto the stage beside our father. "She's lying. Check the documents. There's no way." "The documents are quite clear," a new voice interrupted. James Morrison, my grandfather's estate attorney, entered through the main doors. "I apologize for being late. Traffic was unfortunate." He carried a black leather briefcase that might as well have been a bomb for the reaction it caused. Thomas actually stepped backward. "Mr. Morrison," Blackwood acknowledged, "your timing is impeccable." "Ms. Reynolds contacted me this afternoon," Morrison explained, his voice carrying easily through the room. "She suggested I might be needed tonight." "This is a setup," Marcus shouted. "She planned this." "Planned what, exactly?" I asked. "Being humiliated by my father? Being called a disappointment in front of 200 people? Yes, Marcus, I definitely planned that." Sarah finally stood, moving toward the center of the room. For a moment, I thought she might defend Dad. Instead, she positioned herself equidistant between us, still neutral, still calculating. "You can't do this," Thomas said, but the fight was leaving his voice. "The board won't allow—" "The board follows majority vote," Blackwood corrected, "and your daughter is the majority." Security stepped closer, uncertain who they were supposed to protect or restrain. The entire retirement party had become a corporate coup, and everyone knew it. I took the microphone my father had dropped. The gold plating was still warm from his grip. "You're right, Dad. I am a teacher. 52,000 now, actually. We got a cost of living raise." My voice stayed steady, teaching voice, the one that could quiet 30 teenagers. "I teach 150 students each year. Last year, 30 went to college, first in their families." The room was silent except for the soft whir of phone cameras. "Destiny Jackson, full ride to Columbia. Kevin Chen, MIT Engineering Scholarship. Maria Santos, pre-med at NYU. Should I continue? Because I have 10 years of names, 10 years of futures I helped build. I set the microphone gently on the podium. You measure success in millions. I measure it in minds that learn to think, hearts that learn to hope. And yes, I'm also your majority shareholder. Grandfather made sure of that. Thomas's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. I teach my students that actions have consequences, I continued, walking toward the exit. Even for CFOs, especially for CFOs who forget that family means more than portfolios. Where are you going? Blackwood called out. To grade papers. I have essays on King Lear due tomorrow. Seems appropriate, a father who misjudged his daughters. I paused at the door. Mr. Morrison, should we proceed with the other matter? The attorney smiled slightly. The codicil to your grandfather's will? I believe now would be the perfect time. Thomas grabbed the podium for support. What codicil? The one triggered by actions taken tonight, Morrison replied, opening his briefcase. Clause 47B, regarding family conduct and moral obligations. The ballroom erupted in whispers. I walked back to the center, no longer the disappointment by the kitchen. Morrison set his briefcase on the nearest table, the locks clicking open with theatrical precision. Mr. Reynolds, you were present for the primary reading of your father's will 10 years ago. Every word, Thomas snapped. I know what I inherited. I know what she inherited. You know what you were told about. Morrison pulled out a sealed envelope, the wax seal still intact. This codicil was added 6 months before William Reynolds passed, to be opened only under specific circumstances. He broke the seal with a letter opener. The crack echoed through the silent ballroom. William Reynolds, being of sound mind and body, hereby amends the distribution of assets with the following conditional clause. Morrison's reading voice was practiced, emotionless. Should my son, Thomas Reynolds, publicly humiliate, disparage, or attempt to diminish any of his children, particularly in a professional setting, all inherited assets shall immediately transfer to the affected party. Thomas went white. That's not legal. You can't. Furthermore, Morrison continued, this includes any deferred compensation, pension rights, or stock options derived from positions obtained through family connections. He can't reach forward from the grave! Thomas's voice had gone shrill. I earned my position. Your position as CFO? Morrison looked up. The position your father secured for you 30 years ago? That position? Marcus tried to edge toward the exit. 2 security guards stepped into his path. There's more, Morrison said. Should such behavior occur at a company event with board members present, it shall be considered a breach of fiduciary duty, triggering immediate review of employment terms. Blackwood was already on his phone. Legal? Yes. We need you in the Madison Ballroom. Now. Sarah finally spoke. Dad, you should stop talking. Anything you say? I don't need advice from any of you, Thomas roared. Then quieter to Morrison. How much did she pay you? Morrison's expression didn't change. Your father paid me, Mr. Reynolds, 10 years ago, to protect his grandchildren from exactly this. Let me read the specific trigger clause, Morrison continued, his voice cutting through the chaos. Clause 47B, subsection 3. If Thomas publicly declares any of his children a disappointment, failure, or embarrassment in front of business associates, all my shares previously allocated to him transfer immediately to the wronged party. The math was simple and devastating. Dad's 8% plus the 15% grandfather had left in trust. All of it would go to me. Combined with my existing 25%, I would control 48% of Reynolds' Science Associates. This is entrapment, Thomas shouted. She knew. She came here knowing. I came because you invited me, I said quietly. After 5 years of silence, you invited me to watch you call me a failure. I didn't know you'd actually do it. But you suspected, Sarah said, not accusingly, just stating fact. Grandfather knew him better than anyone. I turned to Morrison. When did he add this codicil? 6 months before his death. After Thomas prevented you from attending the company Christmas party, citing family embarrassment. A collective intake of breath from the crowd. Several board members were whispering urgently. He said if Thomas ever did it publicly, with witnesses, you'd need protection. Morrison pulled out another document. He also left this letter to be read only after the clause was triggered. Don't, Thomas pleaded. Please. Morrison unfolded the paper. My dear Annie, if you're hearing this, your father has finally shown his true nature to the world. I'm sorry you had to endure it. But now you have the tools to fix what he's broken. The company needs a heart again. Teach it well. All my love, grandfather. I had to sit down. Sarah brought me water, the first sisterly thing she'd done in years. This can't be legal, Marcus protested. Conditional inheritance based on behavior? Completely legal. Blackwood's legal team had arrived. Moral turpitude clauses are well established in estate law. Then I challenge it, Thomas declared. I'll fight this in court. With what money? Morrison asked mildly. Your assets are frozen pending transfer, effective immediately. Emergency board meeting, Blackwood announced. All board members to the executive conference room, now. The exodus from the ballroom was swift and purposeful. 7 board members were present, enough for a quorum. They moved like sharks, scenting blood in the water. The executive conference room was everything the ballroom wasn't. Serious, imposing, built for decisions that moved millions. The mahogany table could seat 20, but tonight, only 9 of us gathered. The Reynolds Paulstown Associates seal dominated the far wall, my grandfather's vision carved in brass. Ms. Reynolds, Blackwood gestured to the chair at the head of the table. That's your seat now. My father made a choking sound. That had been grandfather's chair, then his for special meetings. Now it was mine. I sat down slowly, feeling the weight of it. The leather still smelled expensive, authoritative. From this angle, I could see everyone's faces, and they could see mine. Before we proceed, I said, reaching for my own briefcase, a battered leather bag that had seen me through a decade of teaching. There are some documents the board should review. Thomas laughed bitterly. The teacher brought homework. Financial records, actually. I pulled out the folders I'd been building for a year. Emails from concerned employees, contracts that don't add up, all regarding the sales division. Marcus went rigid. You can't. Those are confidential. I'm on the board email list, remember? System error that couldn't be corrected? I spread the papers across the mahogany. Every inflated contract, every suspicious approval, every kickback disguised as a consulting fee. This is a witch hunt, Marcus protested. This is due diligence. I looked at each board member. Phoenix Corp alone, 300% markup, $2 million in unexplained fees, signed by Marcus Reynolds, approved by Thomas Reynolds. Blackwood picked up one of the contracts, his expression darkening. This needs forensic accounting, immediately. I took the liberty of hiring a firm, I said. They're ready to start Monday. Sometimes the people who should protect us become our biggest adversaries. If you're watching this and have ever stood up to a family member who tried to diminish your worth, you understand the courage it takes. Your value isn't defined by their approval or their standards of success. If this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who needs to remember their own worth. Now let me show you what happened when we put it to a vote, and what was really in that briefcase. I opened my battered briefcase wider, revealing years of careful documentation. These emails date back 5 years. Mr. Blackwood, you wrote to me 17 times requesting my input on board matters. You never responded, Blackwood said, taking the printed emails. I did respond. Every time. Someone blocked them from the server. I looked at Thomas. IT logs show the blocks came from the CFO's access code. Thomas's jaw clenched. That's circumstantial. Here's the employment contract for Phoenix Corp's CEO. I slid it across the mahogany. Hired 3 months before the inflated contract. His previous employer? Marcus's fraternity brother's failed startup. Zero experience in our industry. Board member Janet Williams, who'd been silent until now, picked up another document. This invoice. It's for services that our internal team provides. We paid $2 million for work we do in-house. Check who approved it, I suggested. Thomas Reynolds, CFO. She looked up sharply. This is embezzlement. Careful with accusations, Thomas warned, but his voice had lost its power. Or what, Dad? You'll call me a disappointment? I pulled out the final folder. 7 years of questionable transactions, all requiring CFO approval, all benefiting Marcus's division numbers. Marcus stood abruptly. I need to call my lawyer. Sit down, Blackwood commanded. No one leaves until we vote. I spread out the last documents, photographs of Marcus at expensive dinners with vendors, receipts from trips that were supposedly business but were clearly personal, emails discussing appreciation fees. Every document is authenticated, I said. Every email verified through our servers. Every contract cross-referenced with actual deliverables. I may be just a teacher, but I taught myself forensic accounting at night. Grading papers is excellent training for spotting inconsistencies. Sarah finally spoke from her seat. How long have you known? Since the first suspicious email hit my inbox 2 years ago. I waited, documented, and prepared. Just like grandfather taught me, patience and thoroughness win the long game. The Phoenix Corp contract is just the beginning, I continued, pulling out a spreadsheet. Marcus, would you like to explain the Newport Electronics deal or the Riverside Consulting arrangement? Marcus's face had gone from red to gray. Those were legitimate business. Legitimate? I held up an email. This is from Newport's CEO thanking you for the generous finder's fee. $800,000 deposited into an account in the Caymans. Blackwood snatched the paper. This is dated last month. The pattern goes back 3 years, I said. Every quarter, Marcus's numbers look spectacular. But the actual revenue? I showed them another chart. 40% never materialized. It was all paper profits, inflated projections, and contracts that were canceled after the quarterly reports. You're lying, Marcus said weakly. Am I? I pulled out my phone. Should I play the voicemail from David Chen at Phoenix? He's willing to testify about the kickback structure. He kept recordings, too. Thomas slammed his hand on the table. This is a conspiracy. You planned this whole... I planned nothing. I documented everything. There's a difference. I looked at each board member. Reynolds, Schwass and Associates is hemorrhaging money through a corrupt sales division. The CFO either knew and approved it or was grossly negligent. Either way, he's finished, Blackwood completed. Ms. Reynolds, I motion for an immediate vote of no confidence in Thomas Reynolds as CFO. Seconded, Janet Williams added quickly. You can't. Thomas stood, his chair scraping against the floor. I have a contract, 30 years of service. Your contract has a morality clause, Morrison interjected from his seat. Breach of fiduciary duty voids all severance packages. The vote was swift. 6 in favor, 1 abstention. Sarah couldn't bring herself to vote, but wouldn't defend him either. Thomas couldn't vote on his own fate. Motion carried, Blackwood announced. Thomas Reynolds, you are terminated as CFO effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear your office. Marcus tried to slip toward the door. I should go. Stay exactly where you are, Blackwood commanded. We're not done with you. As majority shareholder, I said, standing slowly, I call for a formal vote of no confidence in Thomas Reynolds as CFO, based on gross negligence and breach of fiduciary duty. The board members exchanged glances. This was beyond a family squabble now. This was corporate governance at its most serious. The motion has been made and seconded, Blackwood said formally. Discussion. Janet Williams spoke first. The evidence is overwhelming. If even half of this is verified, we're looking at SEC violations. It's all verified, I assured her. Every document, every transaction. The forensic accountants I hired worked pro bono. They're former students of mine, now at Ernst & Young. They wanted to help their teacher. Thomas laughed bitterly. Your students, of course. All those in favor of removing Thomas Reynolds as CFO? Blackwood asked. 6 hands raised immediately. Sarah abstained, staring at her hands. Thomas couldn't vote on his own termination. Motion carried, Blackwood announced. Mr. Reynolds, your employment is terminated immediately. Your office will be sealed pending investigation. 30 years, Thomas whispered. I gave 30 years. You took 30 years, I corrected. From the company, from employees, from your family. Grandfather built this company on integrity. You turned it into your personal ATM. Security appeared at the door. They'd been waiting outside. Your company property, Mr. Reynolds, one said professionally. Keys, access cards, company phone. Thomas's hands shook as he removed his keyring. The corporate Amex Black Card. His phone with all those important contacts. Each item stripped away another layer of his identity. The car is leased through the company, Blackwood added. You'll need to arrange alternative transportation. This is your doing, Thomas pointed at me, his finger trembling. You destroyed your own father. No, Dad, you destroyed yourself the moment you decided your children's worth was measured in dollars. I just documented it. Marcus tried once more to leave. This time, different visitors appeared at the door, FBI agents in dark suits. Marcus Reynolds? We have questions about your dealings with Phoenix Corp. The walk back to the ballroom felt like crossing into another world. 200 guests remained, phones in hand, waiting for the conclusion of the most dramatic retirement party in Manhattan history. I entered flanked by board members, while Thomas shuffled behind with security. The contrast wasn't lost on anyone. The teacher who'd been sitting by the kitchen now walked with the power brokers, while the CFO who'd commanded the room was being escorted out. Blackwood took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, the board of Reynolds Haas and Associates has voted. Effective immediately, Thomas Reynolds is no longer CFO. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several reporters were already typing furiously. Furthermore, Blackwood continued, Anna Reynolds, as majority shareholder, will be taking an active role in company oversight during this transition. I stood beside him, no longer trying to hide at table 17. The spotlight that had hunted me earlier now felt less threatening. These people had witnessed my humiliation. Now they'd witness my vindication. Thomas stood near the exit, security flanking him. His earlier arrogance had crumbled into something pathetic. The man who'd measured worth in millions was worth nothing now. I want to be clear, I said, taking the microphone. This isn't about revenge, it's about accountability. Reynolds Pond and Associates was built on principles my grandfather held sacred. Integrity, family, and lifting others up. Tonight, we return to those values. Marcus was being led out in handcuffs, his wife trailing behind, her designer heels clicking frantically. This isn't over, she shrieked. We'll sue! Ma'am, please step back, an FBI agent said firmly. The Wall Street Journal reporter raised her hand. Ms. Reynolds, will you be taking over as CEO? I'm a teacher, I replied simply. I'll remain a teacher, but I'll also ensure this company operates with the ethics my grandfather intended. The room seemed to exhale collectively. The teacher hadn't come to conquer, she'd come to clean house. Sarah approached me for the first time in 5 years, her surgeon's composure cracking. Anna, She stopped, started again. I knew. About the contracts, about Dad's behavior. I knew, and I said nothing. I know, I said quietly. Her eyes widened. You know? Grandfather left you a letter too, didn't he? She nodded, tears finally spilling. 3 years ago. His lawyer sent it on a specific date. It said I'd know when to stand up or stand aside, that my silence would be complicity unless I chose otherwise. And tonight? I abstained. I couldn't vote against him, but I couldn't support him either. She pulled me into an unexpected hug. He called you his quiet warrior, Anna, said you had Mom's heart in his mind, said you'd save the company from itself. Mom would have hated what Dad became, I whispered. Mom would have been proud of what you did. Sarah pulled back, wiping her eyes. I'm supposed to be the successful one, the surgeon, the one who fixes things. But you just performed major surgery on this entire company. Without anesthesia, I added, and we both laughed, a broken, healing sound. Can you forgive me? She asked. For the silence? The distance? We're family, I said. Complicated, messy, damaged family, but still family. Still, behind us, Thomas was being escorted to the parking garage. His shoulders slumped, his empire collapsed. The man who'd stood at that podium an hour ago, dispensing judgment like a king, was now just a terminated employee with a pending FBI investigation. He'll need a lawyer, Sarah said, watching him go. He'll need more than that, I replied. He'll need to learn what grandfather tried to teach him, that worth isn't measured in dollars. Marcus tried to make his escape through the parking garage, but the FBI had anticipated that. They waited by his Porsche 911 Turbo, another company lease about to be reclaimed. Mr. Reynolds, the lead agent said calmly, we need to discuss your relationship with Phoenix Corp, Newport Electronics, and several offshore accounts. I want my lawyer, Marcus shouted, his golden boy image shattering completely. You'll have that opportunity, the agent replied, producing handcuffs. Marcus Reynolds, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. His wife, designer dress now seeming like costume jewelry, screamed, This is that bitch's fault. Anna did this. She's jealous because we have everything and she's nothing. Ma'am, your husband stole millions, the agent said flatly. His sister reported evidence of financial crimes. That makes her a whistleblower, not nothing. Thomas watched his son being placed in the FBI vehicle, his face cycling through emotions, shock, anger, and finally, devastating recognition. His golden boy, the one he'd praised from the podium, the youngest VP in company history, was going to federal prison. Are you happy now? Thomas asked me, his voice broken. You've destroyed everything. I documented everything, I corrected. You and Marcus destroyed it all by yourselves. I just refused to let you bury it. The crowd from the ballroom had spilled into the lobby, phones recording everything. Tomorrow's Wall Street Journal headline was writing itself. Teacher takes down corrupt CFO father at retirement party. Mr. Reynolds, another agent approached Thomas. We'll need you to come in for questioning as well. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Bring your attorney. Thomas looked at me one last time. Your mother would be ashamed. My mother valued honesty above wealth, I replied. She would have done this years ago. He had no response to that. Security led him to a taxi. His Mercedes was already being impounded as evidence. In the lobby, with 200 witnesses and dozens of phone cameras rolling, Thomas Reynolds did something I'd never seen in 35 years. He dropped to his knees. Anna, please. His voice cracked, all executive authority gone. I'm your father. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything, I said quietly. That's why this hurts so much. I made mistakes. You made choices. For 30 years, you chose money over family. You chose status over love. You chose to humiliate your own daughter because she didn't fit your definition of success. One mistake. He was crying now, this man who'd never shown emotion beyond greed or anger. Don't let one mistake destroy everything I've built. One mistake? I pulled out my phone. Should I read the emails? 5 years of emails calling me a disappointment? The Christmas card where you photoshopped me out of the family photo? The letter to Harvard asking them to revoke my degree because I wasted it? Gasps from the crowd. Even the security guards looked uncomfortable. Or should we talk about Marcus? How you taught him that cheating was just aggressive business? How you signed off on every fraudulent deal because it made the numbers look good? I'm 62 years old, he pleaded. This is all I have. My career, my reputation. Your career built on grandfather's foundation. Your reputation built on lies. I knelt down to meet his eyes. You taught me that weakness deserves no mercy. Your words, Dad, at every report card that wasn't perfect, every achievement that wasn't enough. I was preparing you for the world. You were preparing me for your world. A world where love is conditional, where worth is measured in portfolios, where family is just another asset to leverage. Please, he whispered, what will I do? Learn, I said, standing. Learn what your father tried to teach you. Learn what your children needed from you. Learn that it's never too late to choose differently, though it might be too late to escape consequences. Morrison approached with another document. Mr. Reynolds, there's one more matter. Morrison held the final document like a surgeon's scalpel. Your employment contract with Reynolds Santer Associates, Mr. Reynolds, Section 15, subsection 3A. Thomas struggled to his feet, his expensive suit wrinkled beyond salvation. My severance package, 30 million in deferred compensation. You can't touch that. Actually, Morrison read, upon termination for cause, including but not limited to breach of fiduciary duty, all deferred compensation, pension benefits, and stock options are immediately forfeited. The number hung in the air. $30 million, gone. But that's my retirement, my entire future. Your future was built on your children's backs, I said. On employees you underpaid while you overpaid yourself. On deals that enriched you personally while hurting the company. Blackwood stepped forward with his legal team. We've already frozen all accounts pending investigation. Your company credit cards are canceled. The corporate apartment must be vacated by week's end. The apartment is mine. I paid for it. The company paid for it, Blackwood corrected. You just lived in it. Thomas turned desperately to the crowd, searching for allies. These people had laughed at his jokes, celebrated his deals, envied his success. Now they filmed his downfall with the same phones they'd used to photograph his achievements. Furthermore, Morrison continued, your father's will contained a provision. If you were ever terminated for moral or ethical violations, your remaining inheritance, approximately 12 million in trust, would transfer to educational charities chosen by your children. Sarah stepped forward. Medical scholarships for underprivileged students. Teaching scholarships, I added, for people who choose purpose over profit. What about me? Thomas's voice had shrunk to almost nothing. What am I supposed to live on? The same thing you told me to live on when you cut me off, I replied. Your own earnings, your own merit, your own choices. The math was brutal but simple. A 62-year-old man with no pension, no savings outside the company, and a pending criminal investigation. The golden parachute had become an anvil. I took the microphone one final time, addressing the room full of executives, reporters, and former colleagues of my father. Reynolds Paulsen Associates will establish the William Reynolds Educational Legacy Fund, I announced, my teacher's voice carrying clearly. Not the Thomas Reynolds Fund, William Reynolds, who believed in building people up, not tearing them down. The crowd listened intently, phones still recording. The fund will provide full scholarships for teachers pursuing advanced degrees, additional support for educators in underserved communities. Because my grandfather understood something my father never did, real wealth isn't what you accumulate, it's what you cultivate in others. How much? The Wall Street Journal reporter called out. 10 million to start, from my personal inheritance. I let that sink in. I don't need 48% of a Fortune 500 company. I need to know that somewhere a teacher is getting the support they deserve. Thomas made a strangled sound. You're giving it away? $10 million? I'm investing it, I corrected. In futures, in minds, in the next generation of educators who will shape tomorrow's leaders, hopefully, better than you shaped your children. Blackwood stepped forward. The board fully supports this initiative. We'll match Ms. Reynolds' contribution. 20 million for education. From a company that had been bleeding money through corruption, now redirecting funds toward growth. I'll remain on as a teacher at PS 118, I continued. My salary will stay $52,000 a year. But I'll also serve as ethics oversight for Reynolds Pound Associates, ensuring we never again prioritize profits over principles. You're staying a teacher? Someone called out incredulously. With all that money? Money doesn't define me. It never has. My students need me. Monday morning, I'll be teaching The Great Gatsby, a story about the hollow pursuit of wealth. Seems appropriate. Sarah joined me at the podium. I'll be contributing to the fund as well, 5 million. Mom would have wanted us to lift others, not step on them. Standing ovations started sporadically, then spread. Not everyone. Some were too shocked, others too complicit, but enough. Enough to show that grandfather's values still resonated, even in this room full of wealth and ambition. Blackwood pulled me aside as the crowd began dispersing. How long have you been planning this? Planning suggests I wanted this to happen, I replied. I've been preparing since the first suspicious email landed in my inbox 5 years ago. The system error, he said, understanding dawning. It wasn't an error. Grandfather set it up before he died. He knew I'd need oversight access. He also knew I'd need time to build a case that would stand up in court. I showed him my phone, hundreds of folders, thousands of documents, all meticulously organized. Every questionable transaction, every inflated contract, cross-referenced with public records, SEC filings, tax documents. You did this alone? I had help. Former students now working at the SEC, IRS, FBI, kids from Brooklyn who made it out and wanted to give back. They worked nights and weekends pro bono because their teacher asked. The forensic accountants, Blackwood realized, they're all former students. Harvard Business School, Wharton, MIT, Sloan. They remembered the teacher who believed in them when no one else would. I smiled. Turns out teaching creates its own network, just not the kind my father would recognize. Sarah joined us, still processing everything. You knew tonight would happen? I knew Dad would eventually cross the line publicly. His ego demanded an audience for his cruelty. I just had to be ready when he did. The patience that must have taken, Blackwood marveled. I grade 150 essays every week, I said. I can spot plagiarism, fraud, and bullshit in any form. Corporate fraud was actually easier. At least numbers don't write run-on sentences. Morrison approached with final papers. Ms. Reynolds, the transfers will be complete by Monday. Your father's assets, the trust funds, everything. 48% of a Fortune 500 company, Blackwood said. You could be CEO. I already have a job, I replied. One that actually matters. The valet who'd smirked at my Honda Civic 3 hours ago now stood at attention as I approached. The same car, the same teacher, but everything had changed. Your vehicle, Ms. Reynolds, he said formally, having clearly heard what happened inside. I apologize for earlier, You were doing your job, I said, handing him $100 bill, making assumptions based on appearances. My father did the same thing, cost him everything. I sat in my 10-year-old car, adjusting the rearview mirror. In it I could see the aftermath. Thomas being helped into an ambulance, his blood pressure having spiked dangerously. Marcus in the back of an FBI sedan, his golden future now federal property. Sarah standing by the entrance, waving, mouthing, "Dinner Sunday?" The engine turned over on the second try, like always. This car had driven me to school every day for a decade. It had carried boxes of supplies I bought with my own money, transported students to college visits their parents couldn't attend, held my tears after parent conferences where I was blamed for children's struggles that started at home. Tomorrow, financial newspapers would run headlines about the teacher who toppled a CFO. Business schools would eventually teach this as a case study in corporate governance and whistleblower protection. But tonight, I just wanted to go home to my studio apartment, make tea, and grade those King Lear essays. My phone buzzed with texts. Former students who'd seen the news, colleagues from school, reporters wanting statements. I ignored them all except one, from Destiny Jackson, my student who'd earned the Columbia Scholarship. Ms. R. saw the news. Your dad learned what we already knew. You're the richest person we know. Just not the way he measured it. I smiled, pulling out of the Ritz-Carlton for the last time. Behind me, an empire had crumbled. Ahead, 30 essays waited about a king who gave power to the wrong daughters and lost everything. Shakespeare would have appreciated the irony. Grandfather definitely would have. The Honda Civic drove into the night, carrying a teacher worth 48% of a Fortune 500 company and a salary of $52,000 a year. Both numbers were exactly right. 6 months later, I stood in the same classroom where I'd always stood, teaching the same students I'd always taught. The peeling paint had been covered with student artwork. The outdated textbooks supplemented with donations from the William Reynolds Educational Legacy Fund. "Ms. Reynolds," Principal Martinez said, stopping by during my free period. "You know you don't have to be here, right? You could be running a Fortune 500 company." "I am running something," I replied, gesturing to my classroom. "Tomorrow's Fortune 500 leaders are sitting in these desks." The news had been relentless for weeks after the party. Thomas Reynolds, sentenced to 3 years minimum security for financial crimes. Marcus, 5 to 7 years in federal prison, his wife having divorced him and taken what little remained. The company's stock had risen 40% under new ethical leadership. 50 teachers had received full scholarships in our first round of funding. Sarah and I had dinner every Sunday now, rebuilding what decades of our father's poison had destroyed. She'd started a free clinic with her portion of the inheritance. "Your dad?" Martinez asked gently. "Minimum security in Connecticut. He writes letters I don't read. Sarah says he's taking accounting classes, trying to understand where he went wrong. Will you forgive him?" "Forgiveness isn't mine to give. It belongs to everyone he hurt. Employees he cheated, family he destroyed, principles he betrayed." I straightened tomorrow's lesson plan on my desk. "But I hope he learns. Grandfather would want that." A student knocked, Kevin Chen, whose MIT acceptance had come through. "Ms. R, could you look at my scholarship essay?" "Of course." Martinez smiled. 52,000 a year. You could have billions." "I have everything I need," I said. "Grandfather knew that. Dad never learned it. Maybe that's the difference between building something and just managing it." She left me with Kevin, who'd written about overcoming assumptions, about teachers who see potential where others see statistics. It was a good essay. It would be better with revision. Everything could be. I kept one letter in my desk drawer, not from my father, but from my grandfather, written 10 years ago, to be delivered only after the clause was triggered. "My dearest Annie, value is not in what you earn, but in what you build. Your father forgot this, choosing to be wealthy rather than worthwhile. Don't let him break you. His measurement of worth is as false as the profits he reports. You chose teaching because you understand what I spent a lifetime learning. We succeed by lifting others. Every student you inspire, every mind you open, every future you shape is worth more than all the money in our accounts. Your father will fall. When he does, don't gloat. Rebuild. Make the company serve its original purpose, creating opportunities, not hoarding them. All my love. Grandfather." I folded the letter as my afternoon class filed in. 30 teenagers, each carrying struggles I could only glimpse, each holding potential that needed nurturing, not judgment. "Today, we're discussing King Lear," I announced, writing on the board. "A king who measured love in words, not actions, who gave power to flattery and exiled truth." "What happened to him, Ms. Reynolds?" asked Maria, one of my brightest. "He lost everything, his kingdom, his family, his mind. But his youngest daughter, the one he rejected for refusing to play his games, she survived." "Did she become queen?" I thought of my 48% ownership, the board seat, the power I could wield but chose not to abuse. "She became exactly who she was meant to be," I said, and that was enough. The lesson began. Outside, New York churned through another day of deals and ambitions. Inside, 30 futures took shape, word by word, idea by idea. My grandfather was right. This was real wealth. My father was wrong. This was true success. Thank you for listening to my story. If you or someone you know has ever been diminished for choosing purpose over profit, please share this video. Sometimes those who undervalue us need reminding that real worth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in lives touched. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself and setting boundaries with toxic people, even when they're family. And remember, true success means living aligned with your values, not someone else's expectations. Your worth is not negotiable. Your choices are valid. Your path is yours to walk. Until next time.